Alrighty, so yesterday we did the emotion index, looking at how every single fan base feel about their team as we hit the midway point of the regular season. Now today we're going to do the hot seat index, and we're going to look at every single head coach. Well, actually, every single except for four teams head coach, and we'll get to why in just a bit. In terms of looking at where they are in terms of the hot seat index. Are they currently in the hot seat and potentially could be the next one end up on the chopping block? Are they going to be ones that, yeah, the seat is definitely going to go hot when things start to go south? The middle tier, obviously, it's unpredictable. You wouldn't be surprised, of course, if they get hit fire, but at the same time, you wouldn't also be surprised that they, of course, would stay at least with the end of the season. Which, speaking of which, that's what the fourth tier is going to be. They should be safe at least until the end of the season. And the fifth tier is, yeah, we know they're probably going to be coaching this team. And surprisingly, there's going to be a lot of teams that actually going to belong into this category. And then, as I mentioned before, I'm going to mention every single team except for four of them because we do have four teams that currently have an interim, or three of them currently have an interim head coach. I'm not going to include LAFC, which Steve Chernow, who already announced that he is going to be leaving until the end of the season. So yeah, there's no point for LAFC of firing Steve Chernow when he's already announced that he's going to step down at the end of the season. And then the three other interim head coach, I'm not going to include in the hot seat index because I don't think we see very often where an interim head coach get relief of their duty. They're just there, just kind of caretaking until these teams decided to find themselves a new head coach, whether it's this season or heading into next season as well. So for Montreal, I'm not going to mention Marco Donado. For St. Louis, not going to mention their newly interim head coach David Critchley, and then for Sporting KC, I'm not going to mention Carey there, and then who actually has done a pretty good job for Sporting KC ever since Peter Mace left his post. But with that being said, yesterday, of course, I went alphabetical order. Today, I'm going to go backwards in terms of the alphabetical order, and I'm instead going to talk about the Vancouver Whitecaps. I'm going to talk about Jasper Sorensen, and of course, I'm going to go with the initial of the coach's name throughout this video instead of team. So yeah, for Jasper Sorensen, his initial is JS. His job should be safe. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And actually, you know what? I need to change a pen here because I just realized that this is not even actually showing on the board whatsoever. So let me change that. Let me change it to a black marker. There we go. Yep, there. Much better. Better. Now you can see it there. But yeah, Jasper Sorensen, yeah, he's not going anywhere. I already mentioned he is definitely going to be running for Coach of the Year candidate. And I know, obviously, the pain that they suffer in the Concacaf Champions Cup final, that is still fresh in Vancouver's fans and certainly these players and coaches mine as well. But what Jasper Sorensen has done to even get to that stage, and not to mention with them still competing for supporter shield and is right there in terms of trying to win the supporter shield this season. Nobody saw this coming. What a job Jasper Sorensen has done, and a guy that I've mentioned from the beginning of the season. He is definitely going to be a heavy favorites in terms of winning the coach of the year. And if we had a midseason award in MLS, he's pretty much the coach of the year so far this season. Then we look at Toronto with Robin Fraser. I'm going to put it in the unpredictable category. So it's kind of unpredictable, mainly because I don't know if them decide to let go of Robin Fraser is going to really take a jolt in terms of this rebuild. I mean, it is pretty clear that this team is in a deep rebuild right now. As much as I know Toronto fans are very upset in terms of how this team is playing right now, and there's been kind of ongoing protests in terms of the resort that this team is. The bottom line is when you look at all the mistakes that they made in previous year with the front office, and especially them kind of getting cap crunch because of those two Italian. Well, I wouldn't say cap crunch, but more like this DT crunch with those two Italian. That is pretty much a big passenger to this TFC side. These bad decisions has really set the team back years, and it's going to take a while for them to clean up the mess. And I mean, yes, while this team is not playing very well this season, and definitely not playing some entertaining brand of soccer whatsoever under Robin Fraser, I don't know if anybody else could come into this team and make things better. I mean, unless if they decide to get hire John Herman back, which he kind of worked miracles with this team last season until they ran out of gas. I don't think anyone will really come straight into this team and really clean up the mess. I think they, of course, will probably stay with Robin Fraser at least until the end of the season. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they decide to let him go because you just kind of had a feeling he maybe is just kind of a stopgap kind of head coach in terms of this deep rebuild that this team is, and once this team started to do well, maybe they're going to look for a more highly profile head coach, whether it's within the league or somewhere else to continue to get this team back to where they were a couple of years ago, being a contender in the Eastern Conference. And then we look at the Seattle Sounders with Brian Schmetzer. Yeah, it's going to be right here. And some I'm not even going to talk too much about because we've been saying many times that these head coaches are going to be safe for a while now, and it doesn't change with Brian Schmetzer. He's pretty much has the safest job security, or at least one of the safest job security within the league. He's actually, I believe, now the longest tenure head coach in MLS after Peter Ramirez, of course, got fired. And while some might question in terms of Brian Schmitzer and whether or not if his tactics is still with in point, I think it is. I mean, yes, there's times where his tactics might not produce some of the most entertaining brand of soccer that the Sounders play, but hey, the Sounders all they know is win, and that's all it really matters. And that yeah, the Sounders are doing well again, and there's really no reason for them to let go of Ryan Schmitzer whatsoever. Then we look at the San Jose Earthquakes with Bruce Arena. Yeah, I think he's going to be right here. I think he should be safe at least until the end of the season, or if not, his job is very secure. Out of all these new head coaches that have been hired, I think Bruce Arena it has done probably right up there in terms of the best job out of all these new hires so far. You know, yes, the Quakes still have some issue at time, and at times they do frustrate me because of their inconsistent play, especially in terms of their finishing and also the defense. But there's no doubt that this team is so much more watchable compared to last season. Last season, it was absolutely unwatchable, seeing how the Quakes play being a laughing stock in the league. Ruth Arena has absolutely injected the life into this team to be a very entertaining kind of team to play. I think over time, you would expect maybe Resort will start to come, especially in reinforcement is going to make, because again, a lot of this roster that Bruce Arena has. Yes, he did bring in his guys with, but I feel like it could definitely get better as the season goes along. So yeah, there's no doubt. I think Bruce Arena he's not only going to be safe until the end of the season, but his job is pretty much going to be secure at least until the end of the season. Then we look at San Diego with Mikey Barris. Yeah. Mikey Barris, his job is absolutely secure, and he's another guy that I think will be the closest competition in terms of Jasper Sorensen winning Coach of the Year, especially if San Diego could somehow get a point record total for an expansion side. I believe the points total record for an expansion side is 59 points that LAFC has, and I believe they're if I'm looking at the standings right now, if I'm not mistaken, I think San Diego currently has let's see. They currently have 30 points, so they would beat LAFC in terms of the points total that is the record in terms of the most that an expansion team has ever had. And what Mikey Veras has done to this team not only has been exceptional, but it's just the fact that he's able to find ways to tinker with the tactics and how just when you thought that maybe teams kind of figured out San Diego when they were on that losing run, he definitely fixed some issue and bring in some right personnel. And next one, you know, the San Diego team looked like a powerhouse right now, and you couldn't ask for a better start that this team has had in their expansion season. Then we look at RSL. Um, with Pablo Mastrani, I mean, I'm gonna put him right here. I mean, I know RSL fan might say that he's under the hot seat, but again, when you look at the roster that this RSL team has, it was no surprise that this team was gonna take a big drop, and especially with the way that the lack of number nine on this team and the lack of talent that they have. I mean, can you really blame this completely on Pablo Mastrani? This is another situation where you know you could bring in some good head coach, and I don't know if they can really get a resort on this RSL team. Though I also wouldn't be surprised that he might get let go, especially you know with the way that it seems like they could be under ownership change in the near future with the new ownership coming in, and they see that this team is not winning. Maybe this new ownership and will pressure the front office to say that Pablo Mastrani is not the guy to do so. So very unpredictable, I would say. Even with the bad run of form that RSL has, I mean, I don't know if we're really at that territory yet for them to let go of Pablo Mastroeni. Though I wouldn't be surprised that, of course, might be the case because when you have a bad run of form, even with some good resume and some goodwill that Pablo Mastroeni has definitely built on this RSL team, teams will not be afraid in terms of letting him go. Then we look at the Portland Timbers and with Phil Neville. Yeah, I think you should be safe until the end of the season. Phil Neville has really kind of proved me wrong this season. The fact that he hasn't really followed that typical problem that you usually see with Phil Neville team getting hot at the right at the time for a bit before once they start losing, that's when the losing really became. It's been kind of like a roller coaster ride. It hasn't really been the case this season for the Portland Timbers. At time this season, even in some of the losses, they've been able to bounce back and get a win, which is something we don't usually see with Phil Neville's side. So good on him in terms of really doing well for this Timber side and a side that besides the defensive issue, this is definitely one of the more entertaining team to watch as well. Then we look at the Philadelphia Union with Bradley Carnell. Yeah, his job is definitely safe. And you talk about, of all the new head coaches that done the best job so far. I mean, I mentioned Bruce Arena. I think Bradley Carnell has done the best job. Well, actually, I say that, but I forgot Jasper Sorensen was just hired this season, and there's no doubt that he's by far has done the best job out of any new head coaches. In fact, I probably should have also done a separate video looking at these new head coaches and maybe do like rankings in terms of who has done the best before I even did the hot seat index. But there's no doubt Jasper Sorensen has done that. I think a close second will definitely be Bradley Carnell. Obviously, I don't know if you want to count Mikey Veras being there. It's considered he's taking an expansion side. But if you don't include that, I think Bradley Carnell is a close second in terms of it. He's done a really good job to guide this Union team to for a team that looked like they were heading into a transitional period, especially with all the key core pieces that they lost this offseason, even throughout the season as well. They're still among the best in the Eastern Conference. In fact, I think they're still number one right now in the Eastern Conference, if I'm not mistaken. And what a job Bradley Carnell has done to this team to a point where he's kind of proven a lot of doubters wrong. That doing his St. Louis time when things kind of got stale a little bit. Maybe he's not the right man to coach in this league, and he's kind of proving it wrong. Where he's definitely gotten the best out of this Union team doing his short tenure with the team. Then we look at Orlando City with Oscar Pereira. I think he should be safe at least until the end of the season, especially with the way that Oscar Pereira just signed a new contract with Orlando City not long ago. I think he should be relatively safe. Now, what I will say about Oscar Pereira and his team is that his team usually will go on a pretty good run in the second half of the season. So as frustrated as Orlando City fans might be in terms of where they are in the standings and at time not playing the prettiest soccer, especially on the road, or not getting the result that they should be. You expect maybe that would turn as we head into the second half of the season. I mean, it was kind of the case last year when they went all the way to the Eastern Conference final, and it was the case again previous year. So I think he should be safe at least until the end of the season, or if not, his job is pretty much secure because you don't sign a guy to a new contract extension and basically say, yeah, we're gonna fire him straight away. But with that being said, now looking at the New York Red Bulls and looking at Sandro Schwartz, I'm gonna say he's gonna be right here, and this is kind of the highest I put a head coach that is right near the top in terms of being the hot seat. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that the Red Bulls they have had a history in terms of not being afraid to let go of head coaches when things doesn't go so well, and I think this is kind of the same case for Sandro Schwartz team. I mean, yes, I know he did let that team to an MLS Cup last year, but I think this is also where the expectations are a little bit different, especially in terms of the expectation from the front office. Well, the Orlando front office might be patient and give a lot of leeway toward Oscar Pereira, especially the goodwill that he's been building to this team, and by far the most successful head coach in Orlando City history. You can't really say that about Angel Schwartz, even though he did guide them to the deepest run that they ever been in the playoffs since 2008. This is a Red Bulls organization that expects some high expectation of not only regularly make it to the playoffs, but finally get over the hump, and they won't be afraid that if Sandro Schwartz is not the guy for them, probably looking into another head coach within the Red Bulls multi ownership group and looking to try to easily replace it there. So yeah, again for Sandro Schwartz, I think he is definitely going to be still under a hot seat, even if the Red Bulls are doing well. If things are going to go south quickly, yeah, the Red Bulls are not going to be afraid to fire him straight away. Then we look at NYCFC. It's kind of the same thing. I think and I would say NYCFC is even higher because NYCFC has been almost a revolving door when it comes to head coaches. Head coaches does not stay long with NYCFC. They have had a lot of head coach even during their short tenure in MLS. And I think this is the same with Pascal Janssen as well. He's definitely going to be feeling the hot seat, especially with them not playing relatively well the this season, and with the way that they were hoping that he was the guy to take them to the next step. It just really haven't happened before. And like I said, just like the Red Bulls, where they can definitely find a way to look within their multi group ownership to find a replacement. It's the same thing with NYCFC, especially with City Football Group. They're not going to be afraid to scout, to look for another head coach around the world to take place of Pascal Janssen. And I've also mentioned before how NYCFC is one of those head coaching role that don't expect you're gonna be there for a very long time. Even if you find some success, do not be surprised if they decide to let you go as quick as possible if Resort doesn't turn well. And right now the Resort are definitely not turning out well for this NYCFC team. Then we look at New England with Caleb Porter. I'm still gonna put Caleb Porter up here. I know that he's been on an incredible unbeaten run, and I know he's been putting a incredible revitalized season so far. But I do think that Revs fans still feel like maybe Caleb Porter is not the right man to lead this team to glory. Even though I will say that when you look at the Caleb Porter cycle, this year is usually the year where he guides the team to some good success, and maybe even an MLS Cup as well. I mean, he did that with Columbus, and he did it with the Portland Timbers as well, albeit the Timbers was the third year that happened. But yeah, maybe he'll guide this team to a deep run, maybe even finally winning the MLS Cup for the first time in franchise history. But you know that he's not going to last very long. Throughout those job. And again, with the way that it is shocking, the fact that he's still the head coach of this team. And by the way, I've also realized I started to put the team name instead of the initial of the team. So let me just change that real quick, because I had a little brain fart moment there of why I decided to put the. I'm almost revert back to the emotion index kind of standpoint where I started to write the name of the team instead of the initial of the head coach. But yeah, for Caleb Porter, I think like I said, even though he's doing well right now, do not be surprised if the Revs are not doing well again. That yeah, a lot of Revs fans are demanding him to be fired. And again, it's kind of a miracle the fact that he still is the head coach of this team. Considering last season he must have had the longest leash possible. Consider how much of a failure New England was last season. Then we look at Nashville SC and BJ Cowhen. Yeah, BJ Cowhen, his job is safe. And again, I talk about Bradley Cornell has done a really good job so far. You gotta also say the same thing about BJ Cowhen. So far, for the most part, when you look at these new head coaches that have been hired this season, most of them actually has done relatively well. I mean, if you just don't look at what happened with Olaf Melberg, most of them actually has done for the most part pretty successful with their new team. And for BJ Cowhen, I mean, I will say that this doesn't really count for him to be a in his first year, because he technically was hired in the middle of the season last year. But this was really his first whole season with the team, so you can maybe kind of say he's kind of like a new hire, especially getting his philosophy into this team. That I think this team is finally starting to buy in. They're started moving away from the Gary Smith way of playing, and the players are buying in the BJ Cowan system, which is almost the complete opposite of what we see with Gary Smith would set up with this team. And as a result, this is why this team has been really successful, and kind of back to being at their best like they did under the first couple of years under Gary Smith. Then we look at Minnesota with Eric Ramsey. Yeah, Eric Ramsey, his job is pretty safe. In fact, Eric Ramsey is one of those guys that I also wouldn't be surprised he might be going back to Europe and coaching with a team in Europe, especially in England. Was rumor that he was probably gonna go back to England and coach West Brom in the championship, and he is definitely one of the more hotly coaching prospect. Not only here in the U.S., but especially in Europe as well, especially in England. I mean, that's can happen when you used to be the assistant head coach for one of the more well-known club known as Manchester United. So I have no doubt that Eric Ramsey's stay with Minnesota isn't going to be the longest, but what he has done with this team has been absolutely spectacular. While some have kind of questioned whether this the model that he used, the Ramsey ball system, where he heavily rely on counter attack and kind of sitting deep and create just a nightmare way for opposition to break down would actually be sustainable throughout the season. So far, it is. I mean, they're currently sitting third in the Western Conference. They're actually tied second in the Western Conference with 30 points. And once again, Minnesota off to the best start that they ever had in the first half of the season. So yeah, Eric Ramsey has done a really good job so far, and I wouldn't be surprised that for this team, as much as I say that the window is open, at the same time you kind of feel like they want to at least win something before Eric Ramsey is eventually going to be poached by one of the top talented team, or even some of the championship team in England right now, as he's already been rumored with. Now, with the LA Galaxy with Greg Vanny, you know what? This might surprise a lot of people, but I think it's going to be right here. Some might say that he should be on the hot seat because of the disastrous season it's been, but I argue right now, with the way that he just recently signed a new contract, which again, that the Galaxy front office is giving him an incredibly long leash when after this disastrous start to the season that he's been giving a contract extension, almost like kind of almost the complete opposite of what you expected them to do. But again, when you win an MLS Cup, you're gonna get a lot of benefit off the doubt even in this season, which has been the worst season that the Galaxy have ever had in franchise history. I think he should be at least safe until the end of the season. And again, no matter what the Galaxy does, I don't think he's gonna be leaving anytime soon. Then we look at Inter Miami. Yeah, for Javier Mascherano, this is not a big surprise. He is definitely on the hot seat. He's probably on the hottest seat right now out of any MLS head coach because of the expectation that he has to meet with Inter Miami. And there were times where last month it looked like he might be the next one to go with, especially with how much of a failure that Inter Miami was going through in a bad run of form, and this looked like there was the improbable that this is just going to completely implode it. But lately, it's have gone a little bit better. But still, again, I think everybody knew this was coming, even from day one. You knew that as soon as Javier Mascherano walked himself into the Inter Miami job, you know that he's going to be on the hot seat straight away. If he doesn't perform in the very least win a trophy or stuff, if he doesn't do that, he's going to be out of the door. Especially, I also wouldn't be surprised once Messi and friends decide to leave. He might be out of the door either way because that's kind of the whole reason why he was there, because he wanted to reunite with Messi and friends and kind of create a very very Barcelona kind of team that Inter Miami is building themselves in. Then we look at the Houston Dynamo with Ben Olsen. Yeah, I think for Ben Olsen, his job should be safe. Again, I know they got off to a bad start to the season, but a lot of that is because they had a very incomplete roster. And even though they still kind of have an incomplete roster, and you expect in the summer that they should make some big signing to address some of those flaws that this roster has, it's gone much better. It feels like Ben Olsen has really turned things around, got the team right back on course to a point where they're right there in terms of being a playoff contender. And consider how many holes that they still need to fill in the roster. The fact that he's still able to guide that team back on course like that after just a disastrous start to the season, got to give a lot of credit to Ben Olsen and him continue to prove a lot of doubters wrong that he's not just kind of an MLS 1.0 kind of mindset head coach, and he still can produce some good resort with teams day in and day out. Then we look at DC United with Troy Lesesne. Yeah, I think Troy Lesesne is in the hot seat. And again, I think out of all the head coach that could be fired next, I think Troy Lesesne could maybe be the next one. Especially, there's been a lot of rumbling that it could happen. The DC fan base are not happy with him. I'm pretty sure the front office is probably not happy with the resort that is gone. But I also think it's not entirely his fault. I mean, DC is a team that is just so the situation that they found them in is very similar to the situation that Montreal is finding. So, in from top to bottom, everything is wrong with this team, and I don't think anybody would really want to take this job right now because of how rotten things have gone from top to bottom for this team. That unless they just go on a complete nuke and just a complete deep sweep, I don't think any head coach would want to take that DC job, or even some of the best head coach that takes the DC job and can instantly get that team back to playoff contention like what we've seen a couple of years ago. Then we look at FC Dallas with Peter Quo. I think he should be safe until the end of the season, even though I know it's been kind of a very inconsistent season for Peter Quo's side and them having this weird pattern of able to score a lot of goals but can't defend and play an entertaining game on the road, whereas at home it's been kind of the complete opposites. I think Dallas will definitely give him some leash, especially from him coming back coming from the FC Dallas Academy. They usually like to keep their head coaches that they promote within a little bit long before, if they think that it's not working by the second or third year, that's when they decide to let him go. So I think that might be the case for Peter Quote as well. And we look at Columbus with Wilfred Nancy. I'm gonna put him right next to Eric Ramsey because I'm just gonna reiterate what I said about Eric Ramsey, the same I said about Wilfred Nancy. Not only the fact that his job is secure right now, but there has been a lot of talk of him potentially going back to Europe, especially going back to France as well. There's a lot of team in France that are looking to trying to get him. He's one of the more hotly touted head coach prospect in Europe right now, and I won't be surprised that Columbus will not have a lot of year left under Wilfred Nancy before he make the decision that to go back to his native country, France, and coach in the top tier level because yeah, he's been by far the best head coaches consistently for the past couple of years, and there's no doubt that he's going to have that especially have that good resume. I mean, unlike Eric Ramsey, where he hasn't really done a lot of achievement in terms of winning trophy, Wilfred Nancy has already done that, and that's why I think as much as Eric Ramsey is a hotly touted prospect, I think Wilfred Nancy even more highly rated, especially with the trophies and the titles that is already in his resume that he won with the Columbus Crew. So do not be surprised that Columbus might not have Wilfred Nancy left for relatively long before he make the decision that yeah, he's gonna take the job in terms of coaching some of these big some of these well-known team in France and in League. Then we look at FC Cincinnati with Pat Nolan. I think his job is secure. Yes, I know that Pat Nolan, his team hasn't really been playing up to the standards that they should be when it comes to being a contender. But I still think that he's done a good job in terms of the culture of this team. There's no doubt that obviously they need to have some reinforcement on the defensive end before the season end if they want to really truly be that contender window. Because again, I feel like this season we're starting to see the same problem we saw last season. As once injuries started to creep in that star-studded back line, yeah, once they're trying to rely on some backup players, yeah, it just goes south very quickly for the Cincinnati team. But what Cincinnati had or what Pat Nolan has done with Cincinnati and the goodwill that he already earned for that team, I don't think there's no way they're gonna let him go. It would be a huge mistake if they decide to let him go because of all the good things that he's already done for the Cincinnati team. Then we look at the Chicago Fire, and with Greg Berhalter again, he's another guy that I think should be safe until not only the end of the season, but their job is pretty secure. Again, not surprised to see Greg Berhalter doing pretty well right now with the Chicago Fire. Yes, there were times where I would say that the Fire kind of gone back to old Fire way of making those boneheaded they play that kind of plague this team is the reason why this team is just simply probably the most cursed team right now in MLS. But I feel like what we've seen with Greg Berhalter is kind of similar to what I saw with Pat Nolan when he took charge of Cincinnati in his first year, where yes, in the first year under Pat Nolan, Cincinnati was still kind of reverts at times back to their old ways of just being a team that just simply make those boneheaded mistake that cost them game. But eventually they sorted that out, and now they look like a team regularly compete in the Eastern Conference. I think this could be the same case for Greg Berhalter's side. If you can just fix the defensive issue that this team has, because we know this team is a very entertaining team to watch and has a good attacking philosophy. This is a team that I think can definitely do well, and especially most importantly, finally end the playoff drought and the longest one right now in the league of any team that have not made it to the playoffs. I mean, as I mentioned already, but before, ever since I started covering MLS on this channel, the Chicago Fire has yet to make playoffs. Ever since I started covering MLS on this channel. Then we look at Charlotte FC and with Dean Smith. I think he should be safe. Yes, I know Dean Smith's side is not playing relatively well right now, but I still think he's done a really good job with the Charlotte team, and it's the same reason I say of him taking over a team that was kind of in a little bit of a chaotic phase in the first two years, but now ever since he took over that team, he has got every ounce of the team left. Now, obviously, he would love to try to fix the defensive issue that this team has had this season, which is really alarming because that should not be the case for a Dean Smith side. Dean Smith sides are usually very organized, as we seen last season as well. But if he can do so, Charlotte is going to be a contender, and he's going to be a guy that should be at least safe until the end of the season. And then we look at Austin with Nico Estevez. Yeah, I think it's going to be right up here where right now things are definitely not going well for Nico Estevez. And I don't think a lot of people are surprised by that. I mean, again, Dallas fans kind of warn Austin fans about the problem that Nico Estevez can bring and the setup that he brings in. Very defensive kind of setup. I mean, I also say the same about Nico Estevez. Once again, I wrote the team name instead of the initial show there. But yeah, one thing I will say about Nico Estevez, as I said before, I wouldn't say that it's entirely his fault. The fact that his team is struggling to score goals. When you look at how this Austin team is built up and the roster that they built up, yes, they spent a lot of money on the attack, but they didn't spend it wisely in terms of actually finding a creative player that actually will give the ball to those big name player and those big money signing that were supposed to be the guy that finish the chances. I mean, I said this before. You know, you can sign all the big money and big name signing for guys that can put the ball into the back net, but if you're not gonna give them a chance to put the ball in the back net and set themselves in good position to do so, which that's kind of what they're lacking. They don't have that creative player. Yeah, no wonder that's what we see with Nico Esvez team kind of struggling. But again, part of that maybe due to the defensive kind of setup where yeah, the defensive setup is not very good right now. To a point where they're just so defensive that's why they look like a very boring team, just like what we see with Dallas. And again, something that Dallas fans kind of warn Austin fans about, that he's gonna make the team super defensive and super boring to watch. And then lastly, we look at Atlanta with Ronnie Delia. Yeah, right up there in terms of being on the hot seat. Again, I don't really need to explain too much. I've explained it so many times with the underachievement that's gone on and what has clearly gone wrong with this team. I mean, Ronnie Delia, he has worked with talent before, and he has been under hot, the hot seat with NYCFC before, but he's able to ride it out, and he's got to hope that's going to be the same case again, because if the resort doesn't come with this team. I mean, I know they can blame the player and especially the underachieving that is happening, but at the end of the day, the coach will always get the stick if the team is clearly underachieving and not performing anywhere close to where they should be. And yeah, for Ronnie Delia, I also wouldn't be surprised he might be the next one to go if Atlanta continue to go through the slump that they're in the first half of the season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at this hot seat index and looking at where every team I think their head coaches right now halfway in the season, and whether or not if they're in the hot seat or they're currently safe for the rest of the season. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash the subscribe button. As always, let me know in the comments below that I put some head coach a little bit too high in the hot seat index, or maybe a little bit too low, that is. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.